Hello. Today I'll be talking about the board game Relic. This came out in 2013, at least this version by Fantasy Flight Games came out in 2013. I think in 2019 it was remade by WizKids. I don't know the differences in the versions. I think the WizKids version is pretty similar, except for I think maybe it had some painted miniatures, pre-painted miniatures. But anyway, I can't swear to that. I haven't played the WizKids version. But I'll be doing a setup and how to play on the Fantasy Flight version from 2013. So let's get started with setup. So the first thing you'll do is unfold the game board and place it in the center of the play area. Next you'll shuffle up these scenario sheets and choose one at random to play. They have like the win condition and some special rules for the game. Now it does suggest for your first game to play the Mystery Beyond, which has no special rules, and nothing really happens in the final confrontation other than if you get to the space you win. So it does suggest playing that for your first game, so that's what we're going to do. Again, the other scenarios that may happen will give you special rules, and when you get to the final scenario space, certain things that you'll have to do to try to win. This one, if you just get to this space, you win. Once a scenario's been selected, one player will read the special rules in the confrontation section, and you can read the flavor text on the back to give a little idea of what's going on. One player will read that to all the other players. Next, you'll shuffle up your decks of cards and place them somewhere near the game board. This is the Corruption deck. You need to shuffle up and place near the board your Mission deck, your Power deck, your Relic deck, your Red Threat deck. You'll want to leave room for discarding as well. Your Blue and Yellow Threat decks. And finally, your War Gear deck. So you should shuffle those and just place them all somewhere near the board where the players can reach them. Next, you'll place your charge tokens and your influence tokens somewhere in piles nearby. Next, you'll take your character sheets that look like this. You'll shuffle them face down. You'll then deal 2 to each player. Each of the players will then secretly choose one to keep, and return the other one. All unused character sheets will be returned to the box. Players then find the character that matches the character figure that matches the character on the character sheet that they've chosen. Players will then choose a color and take the character board, character tokens that match the color. They'll take the matching character base and place it in the bottom of their character figure. These character figures are just a bust. They're not a full figure, so you take the matching base of the color you've chosen and insert into the bottom of that character. I will say, I don't know about the WizKids version, but placing the bases in these versions is very difficult. It's hard to get them in and out. And finally, you'll take the level peg of the matching color. You'll place your character sheet underneath your character board, and then you'll place your level peg where it says start, so in this case here in the level 0. You'll then adjust these dials to match your starting strength, willpower, cunning, and life. So strength is a red dial, so we'll need to set that to 4. Willpower is the blue dial. We'll need to set that to 2, which it's already at. Cunning is the yellow dial, which we'll need to move to 1. And Life is the green dial, which we'll need to set to 5. So let me get those adjusted. Alright, so I've set the dials to 4 Strength, 2 Willpower, 1 Cunning, and 5 Life, as stated on the starting attributes of the character sheet. You place your character on the starting space shown on your character sheet. So in this case, the Ultramarine Captain starts in the Ultramar Emissary space. So looking at the board, it's kind of upside down, but this corner space here is the Ultramar Emissary space. That's where this character will start. I'm setting up for a 3-player game. This player is a commissar in the Imperial Guard. His starting space is Battlefleet Antaeus, which is right here. And finally, I have a Tech Priest Engineer. His starting space is the Omnissian Shrine, which, even though it's upside down, you can see it here, is kind of by the Space Marine, so that will be his starting space. Each player starts with 3 influence tokens. Just put them in your play area. Each player looks at their start space and then looks at the power limit number underneath that space. So for this character, power limit of 1. They'll then draw that many power cards and keep them in their play area face down so the other players don't see them. We'll talk more about what power cards are later, but as you can see, he'll draw that and keep it face down. I think both my other characters here start with a power limit of 1, so they'll each draw a power card as well. Like so. Some characters may start with a higher power limit than 1, so they would draw more than 1. Each player then draws 1 mission card. If it has any immediate actions that are required, they'll take those at that time. So this one does not, so that's for this player. Alright, so we'll draw 1 for this player. Nothing to be done immediately. And finally, for our Ultramarine player, he'll draw his mission card. And again, nothing to be done immediately. And we'll talk more about mission cards and the details on them here in a little bit. I should mention that each character has some special abilities, like the Ultramarine here. Each time you draw any number of mission cards except setup, so this isn't included in setup, you may draw 1 additional mission card and choose 1 to keep. But again, that's excluding setup, so that doesn't come into play for him. The Commissar has some special abilities as well, and we'll talk more about them later, but none of them have anything to do with setup, so we won't worry about that right now. But the Tech Priest here does have a special ability. At the end of setup, reveal 4 War Gear cards and acquire 1 at no cost, then shuffle the rest back into the deck. These are the War Gear cards, so we'll reveal 4. And he gets to choose 1 at no cost. We'll talk about how you acquire War Gear cards at a cost here in a while. Let's see which one he's going to choose for to start. We'll have him choose this Refractor Field, so then that will just go face up in his play area. Now you will notice that this card says charges and has like 2 lightning bolts on there. Whenever you acquire a card and it shows a number of charges and shows a number of lightning bolts, that's how many charge tokens you'll put on there. And basically that's how many uses that you'll get out of that. You'll see it says down here, during a willpower battle, you may spend 1 charge from this card to force your enemy to re-roll a die. Once all the charges are removed from a card, you discard it. Now, we will see that the Tech Priest here has a special ability. Each time you acquire a weapon, armor, or equipment card, which you can see here, it's an armor card. with a charge icon, you may place one additional charge on that card. So even though this shows it has 2 lightning bolts, so normally when it's acquired it just gets 2 charges, he has an ability that lets you add an extra charge to it. The game also does come with some dice, so you'll just need to place those somewhere near the board. And that completes setup. Setup for 3 players here. And we'll now move on to how to play. Alright, so before we begin talking about how to play, we should probably talk about the board a little bit. So all these spaces here on the outer edge of the board are called the outer tier. Okay, then these spaces around this section of the board are called the middle tier. These spaces here that go around the scenario sheet are called the inner tier. And then there's the scenario space. Now the tiers are broken up into spaces, which you can see are separated by these white lines. And then the spaces can compose an area, which you'll see can be made up of 3 to 5 spaces, and they'll have a name up here. So you'll see Maiden World Cyrillica makes up these 5 spaces here. The corners do not count as part of the area. They're like their own space. So then over here we have, Death World, more Gareth or whatever, and it's made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. The interior spaces have only 3. They're the middle tier spaces. Normally only have 3. So this area, Phantom Stars, is these 3 spaces, and Lost Front is these 3 spaces. Again, the corners are not considered part of the area. The inner tier does not appear to be composed of areas, only spaces, and then of course the scenario space. And I'm just mentioning that because some cards or effects may refer to carrying out or winning a battle in a certain area or something like that, so you have to know which spaces compose an area. Alright, so how do we play the game? Well, the game is played in turns. The oldest player is the starting player, and then you take turns in clockwise order. During a turn, a player will complete 4 phases. The first phase is the movement phase. Then you have the exploration phase, the engagement phase, and the experience phase. After you've completed all 4 phases, then you move to the next player to your left, so clockwise. So let's talk about the turn in detail, starting with the movement phase. Alright, so in the movement phase, if a player is in the outer tier or middle tier, then he will roll a die, and he must move the number of spaces that he rolled. He can move either clockwise or counterclockwise, but once you begin moving, you can't switch direction, so you couldn't go, if you rolled a 6, you couldn't go 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6. So once you start moving in a direction, then you have to continue moving that direction for your full movement. But again, you can move in either direction as long as you start moving in that direction and continue moving in that direction. On your next turn, you can move a different direction. Now, that's for the outer tier or middle tier. If you are in the inner tier, you have to follow the direction of the arrows, and you don't roll the movement dice. You'll just move 1 space on your turn. You'll move 1 space and carry out whatever the text is there. Now, a player may have some special abilities or cards that allow them to alter the way they move, or alter the die roll or give them additional die or just let them move in a different manner. But normally you'll roll a die and move in the direction either clockwise or counterclockwise that number of spaces. Alright, so now let's go on to the exploration phase. So we'll say during our movement phase, this is our first player, the tech priest engineer, we'll say he rolled a 3 and he moved 1, 2, 3 spaces. Alright, then we enter the exploration phase. The first thing in the exploration phase is to check for threat icons, which are these wax seals that you'll see on some of these spaces. So in this case, there is one. If there are threat icons, then you'll compare that against the number of cards, face-up cards already on that space of that color, and if the number of threat icons exceeds the number of cards that are already on the space, then you have to draw one threat card of that color. So in this case, there's no cards on the space, there's one threat icon, so this player would draw one red threat card and place it face up in this space. Now, if this player had moved here and there was already one red threat card and there's one red icon, then he would not draw one because the number of threat icons matches the number of cards of that color that are already in that space, so he wouldn't have to draw a new card. But for example, if he moved to this space, well, it's got two blue threat icons. There's already one blue threat card here, but since there's two blue icons, he would have to draw one additional blue threat card and place it on that space. If he moved there and there were already two blue threat cards, like in this case, then he wouldn't draw any additional cards. Now, there could be some special ability or card that makes you draw cards that exceed the number of threat icons on there, or you may draw a card that has an extra threat icon printed on the bottom of that card, in which case then you'll have to draw another card that matches that. Some spaces like this one have a blue, yellow, and red threat icon, so you would draw one blue card, one yellow card, and one red card if none of those already existed. If there was already a yellow card in this space and you moved here, then you would just draw one blue and one red threat card. If there are no threat icons on the space, like this space or this space or this space, if there's no threat icons on there, then you just don't do anything else in the exploration phase. In other words, you would just not draw any cards in any spaces that don't have a threat icon. Alright, so after you've done your exploration phase, you then move on to your engagement phase. Now, in your engagement phase, if there are any threat cards in your space, then you'll have to resolve those threat cards. If there are no threat cards and there is a text box, then you would resolve the text box, or if there's one that gives you an option, for instance, like this space, you choose one of the text boxes to resolve. But if there is a threat card, then you must, or a card or cards, then you must resolve those threat cards. If there's more than one threat card in a space, then you'll resolve them in a certain order. First of all, if one of the threat cards drawn is an event, you always resolve event threat cards first. After event threat cards are resolved, they are then discarded. You can tell an event threat card because it'll say event right there in the middle. So if you had any of those, if you drew any of those, then you would resolve those before any other threat cards that were drawn. Next, if there's any enemy threat cards in there, for instance, this example, it says enemy orc, you would then have to battle that enemy, or if there's more than one, battle those enemies. And we'll talk about battling enemies here in just a second, but Again, you would battle any enemies. Then, as long as you were not defeated and didn't lose a battle, then you would continue with your engagement phase. And if there are any encounter cards on there, and an encounter card again would say encounter, and you would do what it said or read what it said and do that. And then finally, if there are any asset cards that are drawn, then you can just acquire those assets and put them in your play area. If there's only one card there, like in this case, then you just have to resolve that. But if there are multiple cards, again, it's events first. Then if there's enemies, battle those enemies. If there's more than one enemy, you have to battle all of them before you move on to any encounters that may be there. And then finally acquiring assets. But again, if you're defeated in a battle, if you lose a battle, then your engagement phase ends immediately, so you would not get to pick up or do any encounters or pick up any assets. All right, let's talk about battles real quick. So when you're in a battle, there's three forms of battle. So a strength battle, if the number is in a red background, that's going to be a strength battle. If it's in a blue background, that's going to be a willpower battle. And if it's in a yellow background, then that's going to be a cunning battle. And the player will use his attribute for strength, willpower, or cunning as the base in that battle. Alright, so the first step of a battle is prepare for battle. In the prepare for battle step, if a player has any battle bonuses that he can apply, he will state and use those battle bonuses. Now, in this example, where the commissar here is going to battle this enemy orc, he doesn't have any battle bonuses that he could apply. But, for example, if the Ultramarine here was participating in the battle, he does have a battle bonus where he can add 2 to any form of battle that he's in, whether it was a strength or willpower or yellow. Now, if the background under this 2 was a red, then that battle bonus would only apply to a strength battle. If it was blue, it would only apply to a willpower battle. And if it was yellow, it would only apply to a cunning battle. But because it's got this white or grayish background, it can apply to any battle. So in the prepare for battle phase, he would say, I'm going to use my battle bonus. And players can acquire some assets, some cards that will be a weapon or an armor or equipment that may provide, that will have an icon similar to that they can use to add to their battle, and they'll declare that in the prepare for battle step. But a player can only use one weapon and one armor in a battle. Even if they have more assets, if they have 2 weapon assets or 2 armor assets, they have to determine and say which ones they're going to use for this battle. For instance, this tech priest, he got the refractor field, which is considered an armor. So if he had a different armor, he could only use one of the 2 in the battle. So again, the first step is the prepare for battle step. In this case, with the Imperial Guard Commissar battling this orc, he has no battle bonuses or armor or weapons that he can use, so he won't be applying any of those. Alright, the next step in a battle is the enemy battle roll. The player to the left of the active player, which is the player whose turn it is, will roll for the enemy, so they'll roll 1 die. And then that would be added to the enemy's base score, so his total battle score would be 7. Now, I will mention that any battle roll that ends up in a 6, that the result ends up being a 6, that explodes, and what that means is that you then get to keep that result and then roll another die. And if that rolled another 6, then that would explode, and you'd get to roll another die, and so forth, and total all the die together plus your base score to get your total. And that works for both the enemies and the players. If they roll a 6 in battle, it explodes and they get to roll an additional die. But our original roll was a 2. So he has a 7. So after the enemy battle roll, then the player will make their battle roll. So the player will get a dice and roll their roll, and then that will add to the base score of the battle form that you're using. So in this case it's a strength battle, so he would add 1 to the 3, giving him a total of 4 against the enemy's 7, so he would lose this battle. Now I will mention that if a player has an ability that lets them roll additional dice, they would use that when they make their battle roll. Or if they have an ability that lets them re-roll a die, they would then use that. As for example, we were talking earlier about the tech priest here. If he was in a willpower battle, he has this armor where he can spend 1 charge from this card to force his enemy to re-roll one of his die. But anyway, after the rolls are completed and any modifiers or re-rolls are done, then you determine your totals and determine the winner. In this case, we said that the orc player... now, actually, we didn't look at this ability on this orc. You cannot use weapon assets during this battle. Well, he didn't have any weapon assets to use anyway. If you win the battle, you would gain 1 influence. Remember, these are influence. But he lost the battle. Now, when you lose a battle, then you lose 1 life, so he would lower his life down to 3. If there were any other additional effects on the enemy card, stated that if you lose the battle, then those effects would take place as well. Now, if you win the battle, if there's any effects on the card like this one, if you win this battle, you gain 1 influence, then that would happen. But then you also get to take this card, this enemy you defeated, as a trophy, and that can be used in the next phase, in the experience phase. We'll talk about that in a minute. So any enemies that you defeat, you take as a trophy. Now, if you had defeated this enemy and there was another enemy of a different type, not a strength enemy, a red enemy, then you would have to continue and fight that enemy as well. If there's 2 enemies of the same type, for example, if both these cards were here, and they're both strength enemies, they both have the red background underneath their number, then you fight them at the same time. And the way you do that is you just total their score against the 1 roll that the player to your left makes, and then that's their total. So this one would be 7, 8, 9. And of course you take the special abilities or win-lose options on both enemies. Or if there was 3 red enemies, of course you would have to total all of them. But you still take their effects into account. Now, if this player won this battle, then if his total was greater than the 9 that they have here, if he ended up with a 10, then both those enemies would be defeated, and he would take both of them and get whatever win effects are on both cards. But if it's 2 different types of enemies, a strength battle enemy and a willpower battle enemy, then the player gets that you won't fight them both at the same time. The player gets to choose the order in which he fights them. So he could fight this one first. If he won, then he would have to go on and fight this one. Now, if you lose the battle, then that just ends your engagement phase. You wouldn't end up battling the other enemy. You would, if you fought this enemy first and you lost, then you'd go ahead and lose your 1 life, and If there was any other loss effects, you would lose that, but you would not go on and fight the other enemy at that point. So that pretty much covers the way battles work. If there's still some confusion there, then I would just watch the example turns later in this video. I'm sure there'll be several examples of a battle there, and you'll see how that works. And that pretty much also wraps up the engagement phase. So after the engagement phase, you then move on to the experience phase. So the first part of the experience phase is you can spend trophies. So you remember how I mentioned that as you defeat enemies, you take them as trophies. Well, in the experience phase, you can spend trophies. Their trophy point value is also equal to their attribute value. So if this player had previously defeated these two enemies, when he gets to his experience phase, he's got 7 points, 7 trophy points. Well, you can spend 6 points to level up. So in this case, he has 7. There's no way to get change back on the 1 point, so he could discard these two trophies to level up once, since that totals at least 6 points. Now, if he had 12 points worth of trophies here, he could spend all of them to level up twice. But anyway, you spend your trophies. For every 6 points of trophies you have, you can level up one time. When you level up, you move your marker up 1 level, and then you get the rewards shown below this. Now, this icon means you can increase one of your attributes, not your life, but you can increase either your strength, willpower, or cunning attribute. And then this icon means you increase your willpower attribute. And so you can see as you level up, you gain more. This one, you would increase your strength by 1, and this one you get to increase one of your willpower or one of your attributes by 1. It's the same as that one. So these are the same. This one, when you got to this level, you would increase your strength, and you would get to draw 1 power card. Remember, that's these. And I know I haven't talked about power cards yet, but I will very shortly. This one lets you draw 2 influence. So when you get to level 6, you would gain 1 strength and gain 2 influence. Now the maximum for each attribute is 12. If you get something that would take you over that, you just don't gain it. And of course the minimum is 1. If you some effects make you lose an attribute. You lose 1 strength or 1 willpower or one cunning. The lowest is 1. You can't go below 1. If you're at 1 and something says you lose, you just stay where you're at 1. I'm looking at different icon. Okay, this one lets you gain 1 completed mission. We haven't talked about missions yet. We did draw a mission at the beginning of the game, but I haven't really explained missions yet. But I will. But this icon, when you get to level 10, you would gain a strength and you'd gain 1 completed mission. And finally, this icon we haven't talked about yet. That lets you gain 1 life. And of course, as you go up in level, your power limit increases. It depends on where this marker is. And that's how many power cards you can have. At the beginning of the game with these characters, they can all only have 1 character card at the end of the experience phase. But as your level goes up, you can have more. Now, these attributes that you gain as you level up are not the same for every player. So, this one, when he goes to level 1, he gets 1 of his choice and a willpower, where, for instance, if you look at this Ultramarine, he gains 1 strength and 1 power card when he goes to level 1. So they're not the same for each character. So back to the experience phase. The first thing you can do is spend trophies to level up. That's what we were just talking about. Alright, the next thing you can do in your experience phase is if you have 3 completed missions, you can turn those in to draw 2 relic cards and keep 1 of them. If the active player at this point has no active missions, then he would draw one mission card. And of course, like if you had this guy's ability, you would draw, each time you draw any number of mission cards, you draw an additional mission card, choose one to keep and discard the rest. So if in his experience phase he didn't have any active missions, then he would get to draw two mission cards, look at them both, and choose one to keep. So let's just look at a mission card real quick. We'll look at this one. It's got a little flavor text and a title there, but then it usually has an objective, what you want to do. So this guy just wants to win a battle against an orc enemy. So when he does that, he gets the reward shown. He gains 1 cunning, so he would increase his cunning attribute by 1. And then he also flips this over, and it's a completed mission. So as we were talking about in your experience phase, if you don't have any active missions in your experience phase, then you get to draw one, so then he would have another active one. And if you have 3 completed missions, then you can turn those in to draw 2 relic cards and choose one to keep. And relics are usually, fairly powerful items. So, this one is at the start of the determine battle score step, you may reveal 1 power card from the deck and add its power number to your battle score. Or this one is your power limit is increased by 2. And besides being usually pretty good items, you require a relic. You must have a relic in order to enter the inner tier. And remember well, we haven't really talked about winning the game, but to win the game, you need to get to the scenario sheet, which requires getting into the inner tier. And then in this one, it's just if you enter the scenario sheet, you win, but other scenarios will have different objective once you get in there. But to get into the inner tier, you must have a relic. And then the final step of the experience phase is you discard down to your powered card limit and asset limit. So remember, all these characters at the beginning, they have a power limit at 1. So if they had done some effect, went to a space, or defeated an enemy that let them draw additional power cards, they could have those during their turn. But at the end of the experience phase, you have to discard down to your power card limit. Also, as you gain relics and armor, equipment, weapons, you'll notice that they say they are an asset. Well, you have an asset limit, which you can see for this character is 4, for this character is 6, and for this character is 7. At the end of the experience step, if you have more assets than your asset limit, you have to discard down to your asset limit. After the experience phase, then that ends the player's turn and it moves to the next player clockwise. And you'll keep going until one player has made it to the scenario space and completed the confrontation. So once you're in the scenario space, you don't move anymore. All you do is attempt the confrontation on the scenario. Now again, on this one there is no confrontation. If you just make it to the space, you win. But on other scenarios there is a confrontation. So once you get there, if you don't resolve it the first time, then on your next time you'll try again. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the aspects that we haven't previously covered. We'll just talk about some abilities that a player may have or receive from an asset that they get. One is evading. If you have an evade ability, when you get into a battle, you can evade one of the enemies there. In other words, it won't participate in the battle, or you can just skip fighting that enemy. However, it stays in the space. It's not defeated. You just don't have to fight it during that battle. All right, let's talk about skill tests. There may be a card or a space that you land in. For instance, this one that says if you lose this battle, test strength. So when you're doing a skill test, like you're testing your strength or your cunning or your cunning or your willpower, you'll roll one die and add your attribute, add the value of your attribute that you're testing, and if the total equals or exceeds the test value, like for instance here it says test strength 9, so you'd roll a die. If you're this character, add 3 to it, and then if that total is 9 or greater, you pass. In this case, if you fail, you lose an additional life. But other things, like for instance this one here, you're testing your cunning, so you need a total of 14. If you fail, discard one of your assets and lose 1 life. And some things may say if you pass the test, you gain something. It just depends. But whenever you're testing an attribute, it's called a skill test, you'll roll 1 die, add your total that you have in that attribute, and then if you equal the test value or exceed it, you pass it, otherwise you fail it. And in skill tests, if you roll a 6, it explodes just like in battle. But if you roll a 1 in a skill test, you automatically fail. Now, if you're rolling multiple dice in a skill test because of an ability and one of them is a 1, you don't automatically fail. You only automatically fail if they're both a 1 in that case. We haven't talked about influence. Influence is used to buy war gear and to trigger abilities on certain cards and on certain text boxes on the board. If you want to buy war gear, for instance, here at the Battlefleet Antia space, if you come here, you can reveal 3 war gear cards and buy any number of them. And what you use to purchase them with is influence, and the cost of them is right here. So you could spend 1 influence to acquire this one, whereas this one costs 3 influence. And you start with 3 and you can get additional influence from certain missions, from defeating certain enemies, and from specific text boxes on the board. Some game effects may cause you to miss a turn. When that effect happens, you flip your character down. Your turn ends immediately. You don't get to do any experience phase. Your turn just immediately ends. Then the next time it's your turn, you will not take a turn. And then the next time it would be your turn, you stand your figure up and take your turn. If your life dial ever would drop below 1, then you're vanquished. If you're vanquished, you discard any power cards and trophies that you had. You'll return any influence you have back to the supply. You'll reset your life dial back to your starting life value. And then you'll move your character over here to the St. Antius Sanctuary space. And then the next time it's your turn, you'll begin taking turns normally. Alright, let's talk for a minute about power cards. So power cards have a power number and an ability. So the ability on it, it just says when you can use it and what it's for. For instance, this one says play at the end of your movement phase. Move 1 threat card in your tier to any other space in your tier. So you can see exactly what that's for. So if you play a threat card a power card for its ability, you do what it says on that ability, and then you discard the power card. But the other thing you can use a power card for is you can use this number at any time you would make a die roll, whether for moving, a battle, or a skill test. You can, instead of making the roll, you can use the number on your power card. And if you use it for that, again, you discard it. You don't get to use the ability and the number. It's either one. So you can either use it for its ability or for its number. And again, the number is, you can use it anytime you would normally roll a die. So for movement, battle, or a skill test. And if you have one that is a 6, then it explodes just like if you rolled a dice. So you would place it down and then you would get to roll another die. So that's what power cards are. Alright, another type of card is a corruption card. Some game effects on enemies or other threat cards or spaces may cause you to gain a corruption card. When you gain a corruption card, you draw it and look at the number here, the activation number. If that number is less than or equal to the number of corruption cards you have, then you'll read and do whatever it says on that card. If that number is greater than the number of corruption cards you have, then you don't do whatever effect it has, you just flip it face down. In either case, whether it's face down or face up in your play area, if you ever have a total of 6 or more corruption cards, then you become corrupted. Now, I will say the effects of the activated corruption cards can be negative or positive. It just depends. You don't know. But again, you only activate it if the number is less than or equal to the total number of corruption cards that you have. If you ever get 6 or more corruption cards in your play area, then you're corrupted. If you become corrupted, you essentially have to start a new character. So you'll discard any power cards, trophies, and corruption cards that you have. You'll return any influence you have to the supply. You'll then return your character and character sheet to the box. They cannot be used in the future by any other players. You'll draw a new random character sheet if there's one available. If there's not, because other players have already gone through them all by getting corrupted, and there's no available character sheets to draw from, then you're just eliminated. But otherwise, you draw a new character and a new character sheet and a new character figure. You reset your level and all your attributes to the starting level of the new character that you drew. You'll place your character on the starting space shown on the character card, and you'll keep any other cards and assets that you had with your previous character. Of course, instead of starting a new character, you can just choose to be eliminated, in which case you just lose the game. You can be eliminated in other ways, usually from a scenario sheet effect. And again, if that happens, you just automatically lose the game and you have no more character on the board. A couple of other things I did talk about that in battle, in the prepare for battle step, if you have something that gives you a battle bonus, like this weapon wood, which in a cunning battle, you could use that to gain 2 extra, add 2 to your total battle score. Or he has the battle bonus ability that just adds 2 to any form of battle. But you also have something that adds to skill tests. These are skill bonuses. So if you were testing strength for a skill test, you could use this card. If you lose this card, lose 2 life. If you lose this card, lose 2 life. So you wouldn't want to lose this card. But if you have this and you're doing a strength test, you can add 2 to it. Now the difference you can see for battle abilities, they have that kind of spiky wheel around it, where the skill test bonuses just have the smooth wheel around them. And I think that covers most of the facets of the game. I guess I haven't really talked about moving between tiers. When you're in the outer tier, you can come to Battlefleet Antaeus, or St. Antaeus Sanctuary, or the Grey Knight Envoy space, and in those spaces they allow you to move to the middle tier. For example, if you come here and in your engagement phase you resolve this box, discard one of your assets to immediately move to the Antean Shrine World space and into your engagement phase, and you'll see the Antean Shrine World space is here in the middle tier. If you're here in the middle tier and you have a relic and you land on this Guardian of the Rift space, you can see it says here, if you have a relic, you may spend all remaining movement points to move to the Warp Rift, and then you'll stop there and read what it says, and then from then on, each of your turns you just move 1 space as you try to move to the scenario space. Alright, I think that pretty much covers most of the rules. So I'm going to get everything set back up how it was right at the beginning. Oh, one thing I didn't cover was these character counters. Those are used, some cards, missions, or other things will instruct you to place, these character tokens for tracking purposes. They really have no other effect than that. Just a mission or some card or effect will tell you to place one of these tokens or take one of these character tokens, and depending on what that mission or threat card or what have you is, that will tell you what the purpose of that character token is on that card. All right, let's get set up and go through a few example turns. All right, so let's start our example turns. I believe everything is set back how it was right after setup. Our oldest player is our starting player, so we'll just say this player over here, our blue player or gray player, whatever color he is. I guess he's gray, is going to be our starting player. So I didn't really mention this in the rules overview, but what you want to do, at least from what I've learned over the couple of plays I've had of this game, is you want to kind of go around the outer tier for a while, leveling up before you move to the inner tier and maybe level up a little further in there, and then finally go to the inner tier. We won't get that far in our example turns, but let's start. So, all right. So we're starting with this player as our first player. We'll roll he's over here. He wants to win a battle in the Forge World area, which is right here, so he doesn't need to move far. But he rolled a 6, unfortunately. So he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now he could have moved the other way if he wanted to. But that would have put him in this spot, which I don't think he really wants to be at. So he's going to be here. Now we go to his exploration phase, so he's got to draw a blue threat card. It's an event. Now we go to his engagement phase where he'll resolve the cards he drew. So this event, each player may draw 2 corruption cards to gain 1 level. I don't think any of my players want to do that. Alright, so we're just going to discard this. So we'll just put our discard pile here for the blue threat cards. Alright, now he would move on to his experience phase, but he doesn't really have any trophies to turn in or new mission card to get or anything, so he's pretty much done there. So now we move on to our Ultramarine player. He's going to go into his movement phase. He's going to roll a 6. So he will move this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he's over here at the Grey Knight Envoy. So he won't do anything in his exploration phase because there's no seal there to draw any cards. So he'll just move on to his engagement phase. So he'll choose one of those boxes. He's going to do this one to power up. So you can draw 1 power card. Then you may spend influence to draw additional power cards for each influence spent. Well, he's just going to draw the 1 because his power limit's only 1 anyway, so he'll have to discard down to 1 here in his experience phase, which we're entering now. So we'll look at the 2 cards he has. I think he's going to keep this one, so he will discard this one. So we'll just make our discard pile for power cards here. Alright, not much action so far. We'll move on here to the Commissar. He wants to fight an orc enemy. We'll have him roll for his movement phase. Everybody keeps getting a 6. We need that in battle, not really in movement. He'll come 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and he's going to draw a power card as well. Just see if he gets one better than what he has. Play after you win. No, he'll keep the one he's got. He's going to discard this one. He's in his experience phase. He's got to discard down to his power limit, which is 1 right now. That's going to end his turn. Hopefully we get some more action on our next round. Alright, we're back to the Tech Priest. He's still trying to get over here and win a battle in the Forge world. So he gets a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so now in his exploration phase, he will draw a red threat card. He got an encounter. So we need to put 3 charges on this. And we see that because it's got the 3 lightning bolts there. Now we go to our engagement phase where we can engage with this encounter. So you may spend 1 charge from this card to draw 1 power card. Does he want to do that? Well, he's not going to do that right now. So since this is an encounter, it's just going to stay in this spot until all the charges are gone from it. Alright, so now he's in his experience phase, nothing really to do there, so we move on to the next player, which is the Space Marine. His objective is to start his experience phase with at least 1 trophy from 3 different decks, so he needs to find some enemies to battle. We haven't had much luck with that. Oh my goodness, I keep getting 6s. When I don't, I guarantee when I'm battling I won't get a 6. Alright, he's going to move down here. So he will do this, reveal 3 war gear cards, and buy any number of them, then discard the rest. So he'll reveal 3. Alright, he's going to buy this Executor pistol, so he'll discard these. It's going to cost him 3 influence, so that's going to be all the influence he has. And now he will put this in his area, and he needs to put 2 charges on it. So there's our 2 charges. Alright, now he would be in his experience phase. Nothing really to do there, so now we move on to the next player, which is the Commissar here. And he's still trying to find an orc to battle. Alright, so he'll roll for his movement. Are you kidding me? What are the odds of that? Alright, well he'll move here and he'll reveal 3 war gear cards as well. And he's going to buy this Force Sword for 3. So 1, 2, 3. These 2 will get discarded. Alright, that's going to go into his play area, and he needs to put 2 charges on it. And now he would be in his experience phase, but nothing really to do there. I'm going to set this dice aside up here and use it when I get in a battle. I'm going to use a different one for movement. Alright, we're back to the Tech Priest, and he's wanting to win a battle in the Forge world. Let's see. Alright, I just wanted to look at this power card. Just in case I don't roll where I can land in the Forge world again, I'm going to use that as power. So, alright. We're rolling for our movement. We got a 5. That's going to take me out of the Forge world. So I'm going to play this. Play after you roll a die. Roll another die, then ignore the result of 1 die of your choice. So I'm going to roll another die. And I'll use the 3, so I'm going to ignore this one. I'm going to move 1, 2, 3. Alright, now I'm in my exploration phase, so I draw a yellow threat card. Finally, we got an enemy here. Alright, so now I'm going to go into my engagement phase where I will battle this enemy. He should be pretty easy. It's going to be a strength battle, you see with the red. Should be even. He's got a strength of 2. I've got a strength of 2. I don't have any prepare for battle effects that I can do. This is during a willpower battle, which I'm not doing one. Alright, so the player to my left would roll for the enemy. He rolls a 1, so his battle total is 3. Now I roll for me. I'm going to grab this die that's been rolling 6s. So this is for my battle roll. 3 and 3, so it's a tie. So in the case of a tie, neither player wins. I don't lose a life. I don't get to collect the trophy, and this card just stays in that space. Now I go to my experience phase, but I've got nothing really to do in my experience phase, so we can move to the next player. Space Marine's turn. Instead of rolling a die, he's going to play his power card for the number. So he's going to play it for 2, so he's going to move 2. And we'll have him, he's going to go 1, 2. So now he goes to his exploration phase. He's got to draw 2 blue threat cards. So 1, 2. They are both enemies and both blue. That is not good for him. This one has at the start of this battle, discard 1 power card. He doesn't have a power card to discard, so nothing to do there. And let's see, it says at the start of this battle, you may choose a player in your tier, move him to your space, and add his willpower value to your battle score. If you win this battle, with the assistance of another player, discard this card instead of taking it as a trophy. Then you and the chosen player gain 1 completed mission. Alright, so I get to use somebody's willpower. All the other players are in my tier, but the commissar here has a better willpower, so I will move him. Alright, so I'll be adding his willpower to my battle score, but I don't think that's going to matter much because since these are both the same color, I've got to add their 2 together, which is already 19, plus now the player to my left will roll for their battle, so that's 24. Unless I get a lot of explosions, we don't have a chance. So, alright, so let's look at what I've got. 2 for my willpower. Plus I do have a battle ability which lets me add 2, so that's going to give me 4. That's pretty much it. So now I'll roll. I get a 1, 5 plus his 4 is 9 against what, 24 or whatever it was. So I lose this battle. Alright, so the Space Marine has to lose a life. Those 2 cards will stay there since they weren't defeated, and now the Space Marine goes into his experience phase, which he's got nothing to do there. So now we'll move on to the Commissar's turn. It's his movement phase. We'll roll. He's gonna get a 1. He's gonna move here to the darkened glade. Exploration phase. He'll draw a red. That ends up being an asset card. So now his engagement phase, there's no event, no enemy to fight, no encounter, so he just gets to pick up this asset that he drew. He'll put 2 charges on it. And then that's good for when he's in a strength battle. Alright, move on to his experience phase. Nothing really to do there. Check your limits, but he's only got 2 assets and his asset limit is 6, so he's good there. Alright, I'll do one more turn for each player. So we're back to the Tech Priest player. He's still trying to win a battle on the Forge World space, so he's going to roll for his movement phase. He gets a 2. So we'll stay here in the Forge World where he is. He's going to move here. That's going to make him draw 2 blue threat cards. Alright, engagement phase. First, you resolve any events, which he did get one. Draw one yellow threat card. If the card is an event, discard it. Otherwise, place it in your space. Alright, so drawing our yellow threat card. It's an encounter, so we won't resolve that yet because before encounters we have to resolve enemies. So he did draw this Seeker of Slaanesh enemy. If you win this battle, you may choose one. Alright, so he's got to battle this enemy. It is a cunning battle. He's got an attribute level of 4 against a 3, so hopefully he'll win this. So the player to his left will roll for the enemy's battle roll. And, he rolls a 5, giving him a total of 8. Alright, he doesn't really have any other abilities. This is for a willpower battle, not a cunning battle, so we'll just roll and add 4 to his total, so that's not my roll. Ugh, 5. So he's going to lose that battle, so he's going to have to lose a life. So he's down to 3. And then because he lost that battle, that ends his engagement phase, so he does not go on and look at whatever that encounter is. Now he goes to his experience phase, nothing to do there, so that's going to end his turn. Alright, back to the Space Marine. And he rolls a 6 again. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, he's here at the outskirts. Exploration phase, he's got to draw blue. And it is an enemy. So he goes to his engagement phase and he'll fight this enemy. Special timing during your exploration. Oh, it's got another blue wax seal, so now we actually have to draw another blue card, and it is another enemy. Lovely. At the start of this battle, draw one corruption card. And what did this one say? During your exploration phase, this enemy adds the following threat icon. Yeah, that's what we already did. Okay, but now he has to draw a corruption card. That's up here. Now, Space Marine has a power. Each time you draw a corruption card, place it face down. Your corruption cards never activate. So he can still become corrupted if he gets 6, but he never has to look at them and activate any of them. Alright, but he still has to battle both of these enemies, so because they're the same, they're both willpower, they add there together. 3 and 1, 4. Player to the left will roll for their battle roll. They get a 1, so that was lucky. So a 5 total. He's got willpower of 2. He rolls a 3, so 5. So it's a tie. He doesn't lose a life, but those enemies are not defeated. And I'm just having terrible luck here. Alright, we'll come to the commissar here. He's just going to roll for his movement phase. 2, 1, 2. He's going to draw blue. Alright, he got a enemy, so go to his engagement phase. At the start of this battle, reveal one War Gear card. Add the cost of the War Gear card to this enemy's battle score. Oh, lovely. 3. So 3. So his battle score is 3, but it's blue. Alright. So the player to the left will roll for the enemy. A 1, so his total is 4. So I should win this because my base score is 4. The worst I can roll is a 1, so 5. So I'm going to defeat this enemy. I don't even need to roll. So this enemy is defeated. If you win this battle, discard this card instead of taking it as a trophy, which would have been worthless since it's worth nothing. Then acquire the War Gear card at no cost. Oh, okay. There's that War Gear card that we got. And I forgot I had this one where I could have discarded one of these charges to add 3 to my willpower battle score, but luckily I didn't need it anyway. And now I've got this one I need to put 2 charges on. Since they're both, all 3 of these are weapons, I would have to decide which one. You can only use one weapon when you're battling, so I would have to decide which one of these I was going to use when I battle in the future. And now this just gets discarded. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I've done several turns here. I've not had much luck. I haven't completed a mission. I was hoping to show something like that, but I think you can kind of see how the game plays. I've played it a couple of times. It's okay. It's not one of my favorite games, but I have fun when I'm playing it. I do have an expansion for it. I think it's the Halls of Terra. I actually haven't even tried that yet. I'm not sure what all that adds to it. This version, the Fantasy Flight version, and that expansion that I have, I know they're not available. As I said, I know WizKids reprinted this game at some point. I don't know if it's still available through WizKids or not, but if it looks interesting to you, I'm sure you could probably find the WizKids version at a reasonable cost. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.